Welcome to Breaking Barriers, where we're exploring African American history and today's social justice issues. Change starts with awareness, so listen and learn. I'm your host, Stephanie, and let's get started. Hey, y'all. Welcome back to Breaking Barriers. If this is your first time, welcome. So excited that you're here. In today's very special episode, I am so honored to put this episode together for the Bristol Community College Women's Center. So happy that I could be a part of your Black History Month and make an impact and educate those. So today we're going to talk about intersectionality. We're going to go over the origin of it, what it means, the history, key figures, and what we can do to make an impact on intersectionality. So to begin, what is intersectionality? Intersectionality is a framework that recognizes how different aspects of someone's identity, gender, race, class, sexuality, disability, and more, how those come together and overlap to create a unique experience of oppression or privilege. It can go either way. So in 1989, a woman named Kimberlé Crenshaw termed the point intersectionality in order to describe how Black women specifically, were being excluded from feminism and civil rights movements. So to help you better understand, I'll give you a real life example. Imagine a Black woman experiencing workplace discrimination. She could be dealing with racism because she's a Black woman, or she could be dealing with sexism because she's a woman. Different from if you were to see a white woman in the workplace or a Black man in the workplace. She has two different parts of her identity that could be discriminated against. So why does this really matter? This is a really important conversation to have because many conversations regarding civil rights, human rights, dresses solely Black men, or if you're talking about feminism, it usually equates to white women only. So these conversations are about to have and address Black women, queer Black women, or other marginalized communities that are not generally talked about in these conversations. It makes sure everyone is included, and no one is missing out on the fight for justice. So now if we break down the history and we look at the key figures of intersectionality and who was pushing for the change, one of the biggest names that should be talked about in this conversation is Sojourner Truth. There are many things that she has done, but the most prominent in this conversation is her speech called Ain't I a Woman? So let's break it down. In 1851, Sojourner Truth presents this speech called Ain't I a Woman?, where she discusses how Black women are being left out of conversations regarding women's rights and abolitionist movements' rights. She also discusses how white women are fighting for the right to vote, but ignoring the struggles that Black women are facing as far as racism and slavery. She continues to challenge gender norms in this speech, where she's asking if women are so gentle and they need to be taken care of and they need to do all of these things, then why she, as a Black woman, is doing hard labor, bearing children, and dealing with oppression. In her speech, she continues to talk about how women deserve the same rights as men do, stating, I have muscles just like a man, I can carry as much as a man, I can do all the same things that a man can do, so why can I not own property and do things as a solo Black woman? I would also like to incorporate these postcards that I got. It's 100 postcards, but it is 2 of each one, so it's 50 Black women who have changed the world. And it just gives a little bit of snippet information about them, like a quote from them, a picture of them, and then just a little tiny information about them, like where they were born and all of that. So the first one I have is, of course, Sojourner Truth. Here's the picture of her. And I love how they're painted. Like they're very nice. It looks like someone like hand painted these. But anyways, so she was born in 1797 in New York. She died November 26th of 1883. She was an abolitionist. And the quote from her says, "And the Lord gave me the name Truth, because I was to declare the truth to the people." And that's exactly what she did. She spoke on the importance of equity and just being able to see the rights equally dispersed between men and women, showing that what truly is the difference between men and women, and why is it that she is not able to do the things that a man is able to do, although she has the ability to do it. Why does she not have access to the same resources as a man, although she has the same abilities and can do all of these same things that a man can do? She has all the same qualities and is able to stand up for herself. And yet, for some reason, she isn't given equal access to the same resources. Then in 1974, we have the Combahee River Collective, which is a group of Black feminists and lesbians who are rejecting the ideas of racism in white feminist movements and sexism and Black liberation movements. They stated that we are actively committing to struggle against racism, sexualism, heterosexualism, and classism in oppression. Their work laid the foundation for today's conversation about Black feminism and LGBTQ rights. So there are many key figures in the intersectionality movement and addressing what it is and the importance of it. So one of the key figures in intersectionality is a woman named Audre Lorde. She is a Black lesbian feminist writer who, I'm going to read her quote so that we can get a full understanding of it. She wrote, "There is no such thing as a single issue struggle because we do not live in single issue lives." She emphasizes how Black feminism must be inclusive of queerness and class struggles, how these things are overlapping in our lives and how we cannot look at them through one of our identities. I'm not just Black, I'm also a Black woman. There are things that overlap that create different struggles and that create bigger problems than it could have been if it was just one piece of our identity. But we cannot face things as only one side of our identity. We have to address things as who we are as a whole, because that's how the world works. Then we have Bell Hooks, who challenges white feminism and the patriarch, just discussing how race and gender and class shape oppression, how those things create such a big space for oppression to be there. Lastly, we have Miss Angela Davis, who is an activist and a scholar that discusses racism, gender oppression, class struggles, and tying it all together in the PRISM industrial complex. Miss Angela Davis, look at the picture. It's such a good picture. Angela Davis was born January 26, 1994 in Birmingham, Alabama. She was a political activist, author, and college professor. And of course, she's still alive to this day. The quote from her on here says, "I am no longer accepting the things I cannot change, and I am changing the things that I cannot accept." Yes. I'm gonna read it again because it was so good. "I am no longer accepting the things that I cannot change. I am changing the things that I cannot accept." She was willing to go above and beyond and fight for whatever she felt was right. She ended up on the FBI's top 10 most wanted list. And she was arrested for being tied to some murders, but she was exonerated as there was no evidence that she actually had taken any part in it. It proved that she had no part in it. But because she used her voice to make change over the things she did not accept, she became on the top 10 most wanted list of the FBI because they did not want her to use her voice because her voice was making the change that they were terrified of. So be like Angela Davis and use your voice. Push for the change. Push for the change that you want to see in the world. Do not accept the things that you are not okay with, that you know is wrong. Now we can discuss where intersectionality matters today. First, with Black LGBTQ issues. So the first one I want to discuss is double discrimination, where queer Black individuals are facing both racism in LGBTQ spaces, and they're dealing with homophobia, transphobia in the Black community. So an example of this is the erasure of Black trans women in mainstream social justice rights, specifically regarding the LGBTQ community. People such as Marsha P. Johnson. So if you don't know who Marsha P. Johnson is, I'm going to give you a little bit of a breakdown of who that is and her impact on LGBTQ rights and the movement moving forward. So Marsha P. Johnson was a Black trans woman, also identified as a drag queen and a prominent figure in early LGBTQ rights. She was recognized widely as one of the key figures in the Stonewall Uprising by 1969. This became a catalyst for modern day LGBTQ rights. Along with a woman named Sylvia Riviera, Johnson co-founded a program called Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries, STAR, in 1970. The program worked to support and advocate for the rights of transgender individuals and sex workers that were often marginalized within the larger LGBTQ community. So, despite her pivotal work in the LGBTQ movement, she is kind of largely erased through that history due to people not viewing her as palatable as other leaders in the movement. So there are many reasons as to why she's kind of erased from the history. One of them being transgender erasure, which is just Johnson kind of, obviously identified as a Black trans woman, and they're often marginalized within the broader civil rights movement. So a lot of the things that the civil rights movement was pushing for was targeted more towards cisgender individuals, unfortunately. Um, especially especially gay and lesbian people. So transgender people, particularly women of color, of course, and we see this still to this day, face compound discrimination through violence, which is often targeted specifically towards transgendered individuals and is often ignored in the Black community. Another reason is racial discrimination. As a Black woman in a predominantly white LGBTQ movement, Johnson also often faced racism, even by the people who were trying to push for the same change. Many of the people who were in her circle were pushing for change, but not identifying with the struggles that she was facing. So it wasn't something that they were specifically pushing for. And they were also discriminating against her because, again, it was not a struggle that they were facing. They were only pushing for what they felt like they needed individually and not as a whole. Another reason is gender normativity. Johnson often pushed against gender norms, which even now is still something that people are very touchy about. There's many people who have a set idea of gender norms, who's supposed to do what, how it's supposed to be done, all of these things. And this is something that Johnson often challenged, which made people uncomfortable. Although her work is kind of erased from history and not often shown, her legacy still lives on and inspires people to this day. Another Black LGBTQ issue that we are seeing is violence against Black trans women. The murder rate of Black trans women is disproportionately higher than any other. And society is often ignoring this struggle because the mixture of racism, sexism, and transphobia. Then we see the struggles of Black women, first starting with the gender pay gap. I want to discuss a little bit the contributing factors to the wage gap. There's a good amount of them, so let's break it down. So the first one is occupational segregation. Women are often overrepresented in low-paying fields. For example, I'm a social worker. Majority of the people that I work with are women. It is a field where people see nurturing, need, take care of people, to help people, that is often seen as a womanly trait. So it is often highly saturated with women. So it's an often lower paying job. And then you find men who are often more in higher paying jobs like engineering, technology, finance. I'm not saying that women can't be in these fields, but it is often highly saturated with males. The next contributing factor is discrimination. Very basic. Most of the time, these women are being paid less solely just because they are women. Although it is illegal in many places, it still happens. It's still deeply rooted in the culture of the workplace because of stereotypes. Another big contributing factor is caregiving responsibilities. Women are more likely to take time off of work due to pregnancy, taking care of their child, whatever the reason may be, it's solely related to caregiving. So that is unfortunately another contributing factor. Another big factor that plays into this is bias in promotion and leadership. Women often face much bigger barriers in moving up in their field or getting higher pay than males do. There is a level of unconscious bias and lack of mentorship towards women in companies that leads to men getting those promotions or those positions in leadership. There is the glass ceiling effect, which means that fewer women have the opportunity to reach those higher levels within organizations. And the last one I'm going to bring up is intersectionality. This can be race, ethnicity, LGBTQ factors, and different abilities. These all play into the role of how much somebody is paid, which is really sad to say because these are things that people don't have control over. I didn't ask to come out a certain color. I didn't ask to come out as a woman. I didn't these are things that I have zero control over, that people have no control over. And yet it is a contributing factor to how much they're going to get paid compared to a white man. So seeing those different points of a person's identity affect how much they're getting paid says a lot. So in summary, the pay gap is really just a combination of so many different aspects. Like I said, intersectionality in general, it's playing on those different aspects of different levels of oppression. So if you are a woman, a Black woman, a queer Black woman, those are all just adding points of possibilities to be discriminated against. Although none of those factors are anything you can control, it still is this place where they believe that they can discriminate against you. So in order to address the pay gap, we need to look at the root problem, the reason why this is all happening in order to make that change, which is discrimination, caregiving roles, occupational segregation, and all the other factors that I discussed. Being able to address those and realize that that is the root problem. If those are not addressed, there will never be a change. Black women only make 64 cents on every dollar that a white man makes. Even in Black-led movements, women's labor is often undervalued. If we look back in history, a lot of the significant figures that we see are Black men. It doesn't mean that only Black men were doing the work. It's just the women were hidden figures kind of behind those men. Even in the Black Lives Matter movement, a lot of people usually think that it is run by men, but it was founded by a woman. A lot of key figures in that movement are women leaders, but that's often disregarded or undervalued. Black Lives Matter one. Very nice, very nice. It's a couple of different people on here, people who took part in founding the movement. And then there's a couple quotes on here. We are the generation call to action. When Black people get free, everybody gets free. And I challenge us to all have the courage of conviction to fight for a fair, just, and inclusive society. I think that is extremely important because we are constantly fighting for the rights of everybody else. Like, we are there to support everybody in the fights that they're fighting, but yet when it comes time to the Black community, especially Black women, nobody is there to speak for us. It is us and us alone. We are seen as the strong, powerful Black women, which is great, but it comes to a point where it's like you cannot always keep pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing when no one is there to support you. We need support. We need more voices to create that change. And although it is important to have our community standing by our side, it is essential to also have other representations to support and be able to actually make the change. To be inclusive and change in policies and laws and all the spaces that change needs to be made, whether it's through companies, businesses, whatever it may be, creating that change needs to be done through the power of all of our voices. Another struggle facing Black women is maternal mortality rates. It's just something that I discussed in one of my previous episodes. Black women are 3 times more likely to die during childbirth due to racial biases in healthcare. Even Serena Williams had a near-death experience during childbirth, which is continuing to show that class and wealth have nothing to do with it. That is solely racism rooted in our healthcare system that is affecting this problem, that is causing this problem. And then here we are, we have Serena Williams. Look at her picture. So nice, so nice. All right, so she was born September 26, 1981. And she's obviously a tennis player. We know that. And then her quote by her is, "I really think a champion is defined not by their wins, but how they can recover when they fall." I think this is really important because you really don't know the victory of winning without knowing what it feels like to lose. So I think that's really important. Another struggle that we are dealing with in the Black community is the Black differently abled community. This is something that's often overlooked in activism. It's not really discussed, but Black people with different abilities are faced with a higher rate of unemployment and police brutality, which is something we often see. A lot of times when we're seeing situations of police brutality, it's often someone dealing with a mental health crisis who is dealing with something, who's going through a crisis in that moment, but the police don't know how to de-escalate the situation. They don't know how to handle mental health. And so it escalates very quickly and it becomes violent. And it's something that they're already overwhelmed with whatever may be going on as far as the crisis, that they cannot get themselves out of that to realize that their life is in danger. And the police aren't doing their job properly. There are many situations that we could look back on, and many people who were unfortunately killed or brutalized by the police due to a mental illness and it not being properly addressed. Having the police call a crisis unit, whether it is a group of social workers, therapists, whatever it may be, that come out to help in the situation, rather than police trying to take it into their own hands and not understanding what is going on in that moment. Lastly, I want to talk about Black immigrants. This is a struggle within the Black community itself. A lot of the times, Black immigrants coming from Haiti, Nigeria, Jamaica, wherever it may be, are facing discrimination and racism from both white Americans, but also Black Americans because of cultural differences and xenophobia. It may seem weird to think that, oh, like I'm Black and you're Black, why are one of us discriminating against the other person? Although we're both Black, we are coming from different places who have different cultural norms where we're practicing very different things. And sometimes people don't understand that. And what people don't understand, they tend to judge. So unfortunately, it is something that we do deal with in the community. We also have issues with immigration policies. Haitian asylum seekers are often dealt harsher treatment than at the US border than other non-Black migrants. So now I want to talk about solutions, what we can do to push for change. There are so many things that we can do. First, supporting Black individuals, whether it is a Black woman-owned business, whether it is a supporting people with different abilities, people of the LGBTQ community, whatever it may be, supporting them, providing them with whatever that they may need, whether it's buying their clothing brand or just watching their video, liking it, whatever it may be, being there to support them and show them that you care about them and that their life is valuable, just as valuable as yours is, and fighting for their rights as well. Also, just educating yourself, watching videos like this, reading books, articles, whatever it may be, from Kimberlé Crenshaw or Angela Davis or Audre Lorde, a bunch of people that I mentioned. There's also way, way more, but those are the ones that I mentioned. Also, just listening to current LGBTQ leaders, activists in the Black community, people that are advocating for people of different abilities in the Black community. Whatever it may be, being there to support those voices and uplift them. Another big one that I always like to talk about is policy. Advocating for a policy that is addressing people in our community, not just Black people, Black women, Black queer women, Black people with different abilities, whatever it may be, address them, fight for their rights as well. Think about, okay, you know what? I know this policy is helpful for me as a Black woman, but is this going to be helpful for someone who has a disability or for someone who's in the LGBTQ community? Is this fully representative of the Black community as a total? There are many laws and policies that you can already support. Black maternal health, initiatives on fair wages to make sure that there is no pay gap, working for protecting individuals in the LGBTQ community, people with different abilities, keeping them safe and protected to ensure that they have access to all the things that they may need and that they are on the same fair playing ground. Building a community and mutual aid is extremely important, like I said before. Supporting the people in our community. I think this is something big that a lot of people are doing right now, especially because DEI laws. Because so many companies are rolling back on DEI, it is pushing people to make change, especially with their money, to not support places that would not hire them or do not care for their life. So I think this is something that is really important that is being played out right now, which I'm grateful for. I am definitely doing my best to take part in that, not shopping at Target, Walmart, Amazon, all of those big companies, and also the small ones as well. But just keeping that in mind and doing my best to support local businesses and Black-owned businesses, just being a part of that movement and that push, because money is what talks. So supporting intersectionality organizations is really important in being able to build that community and provide that mutual aid. So I'm just going to list off a couple of them and what they do. So first is Sister Along, which is Black reproductive justice. And then there is the Okra Project, which helps Black trans people. And then there's the Black and Disabled Crowd, disability advocacy. These are organizations that we should be supporting, whether we are using it as a resource. For me, I'd be able to use those as a resource for my clients. You could use this as a resource for yourself, friends, family, or just being supportive and knowing that you played a role in being able to support and make change. Lastly, I think the most important thing is being in solidarity with all Black people. Being there to use your voice. If you are someone who feels like, you don't face oppression often or whatever it may be, support the other people as well. Being there to address colorism, racism, homophobia, transphobia, whatever it may be. Speak up when you hear something that is not right, especially for someone who is not able to speak up for themselves, is not willing to, is scared to, whatever it may be. Address these things, talk about it, have those conversations, because some people just don't know. You don't know what you don't know. Some people are completely uneducated. They're taking their opinions from other people that they are around them, and they don't understand that what they may be saying is wrong or what they're doing is wrong. So educate people. Let that be your first step before you jump to conclusion. Educate people. And if they don't understand, be the voice that helps them to understand. Lastly, before we close out, I just want to give you a quote from Kimberlé Crenshaw, and just to better wrap up intersectionality. If we are not intersectional, some of us, the most vulnerable, are going to fall through the cracks. Be there to stand up for the rights of the Black community, even if it does not affect you, even if you are not a part of that specific community, if that is not a part of your identity, speak up about it either way. Be there in solidarity for the full Black community. But thank you again for listening. I'm so honored to be able to make this video for the Bristol Community College. Thank you for the opportunity, and I really hope that this was educational and it's helped you better understand intersectionality. Thank you again for listening. If you have any questions or you're interested in what I was talking about and you would like to hear more, please check out my YouTube, breaking_barriers_. You will see a picture of me. And I have, I think, 11 or 12 other episodes that you can watch about ranging topics, voter suppression, Jim Crow, redlining, gentrification, women's maternal health. There's so many things that you can listen to. If you have anything that you want to hear about or you want to learn more about, please let me know in my comment section on any of my social medias. Thank you so much and have a great night. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode.